Okay, now one of the discussions, well, a lot of things that a lot of people ask me is about Wingchun, is applications of Chisao, how we train it, why do we train it. A lot of people don't even find Chisao useful, right? And it's not an easy answer because there are so many applications to Chisao that it is quite long. So I would need many hours to train with you, explain to you, make you feel certain things. But if we look at Chisao and why it is used and how it's trained, let's look at it at a very basic level. You see a lot of schools sometimes just working with very minimal pressure, right? And they only work without any forward pressure at all. They're basically what I call windscreen wipers, you know, because they're doing this type of thing, you know, like they're washing windows, but it's not exactly like that. Because we work various ranges, right, and even at close range you have various ranges, okay, it's not just a punch, all right, and I'll explain to that as we go along with the video. But let's say that even at this range here, as you can see, we're working very lightly, and what we aim for initially is to have a very good sensibility and contact with the wrists. So the wrists need to have full contact, 360 degrees. If I feel there's any attachment, right, within the wrist area, as soon as I feel the minimum of holes, I just simply enter, right? And of course this needs to be the initial phase of training. If we go directly into pressure training, then you can miss out on something very important, which is highly reactive and what we call very light Chisao. Because if I have my student Biagio, he comes to touch me, as soon as he touches, I react. So it's high reactivity as soon as you touch, and that's one range, okay? It's very different, so whatever he does, I will react immediately. So immediate reactions in a fight, okay, especially at close range, if you're highly reactive and you learn how to be relaxed, so all your joints or articulations, as we call them in Italian, articolazioni, alright, they are highly reactive. So all your joints, shoulder, elbow, wrist, fingers, need to be very relaxed in order for all your muscle groups to be fully functional. Okay, so that's one aspect. Then we go maybe into a second aspect, alright, and always working on a basic level, whereas I don't want to get too complicated, but we start working direct pressure. So my idea would be, maybe instead of doing a footwork forward, maybe I would just give him a direct pressure into his body. And at this stage here, he just learns to deal with my direct pressure. Same thing with me, so if he gives me direct pressure, my body learns to deal with this direct pressure. So this is already a range where maybe, you know, I could be at this distance here and I may, you know, push him, or I'm at this range here, I may throw a punch, alright, or bang. Because at this range here, if you're very well trained, alright, you can be quite dangerous. Now, one of the reasons I invented Wingchun and I probably have never really gone into depth in explaining the difference between Wingchun and Wingchun. Wingchun always belongs to the Wingchun family, alright, because our nucleus still belongs to a lot of work that we do in Chisao. But you have to be conscious, right? Not everybody, but those who are well trained, be it karate, be it Wingchun, be it boxing, alright, they can throw at this range if they are well trained. A very powerful punch, very powerful hook, a very powerful elbow, and you know, it doesn't take much to knock somebody out if you're well trained. Now, this is a problem because one of the myths and one of the things that people look at negatively in Wingchun is they seem to think that we only have these punches here. And of course, if you're not well trained, and I believe I am well trained, I can execute a very powerful punch from this range here, okay? Be it one punch or two punch. So, you know, I've got to thank boxing, let's say. I did many years of boxing and it made me understand body mechanics better. And so one way, and I won't get into it too deep or else it's going to take too long, but you know, one way I do it, sometimes what I do to explain a motion to a student is I actually get them to do a motion similar to boxing so they can get used to winding up and using their body. And maybe I get them hitting a focus power or something, right? So they can express their power. One of the important things in Wingchun is that you need to learn to express your power, right? I'll connect all this back to Chisao. So body mechanics is fundamental. And as my movement gets large, right, what I do is I start becoming smaller, right? But the motion is still very similar to that of boxing. It just becomes a punch. It just becomes invisible. And I'm still using my whole body to generate in a short power punch, in a short range punch, maximum power, right? So you don't want your Chisao to give you the opposite effect. The last thing you want to do in Chisao is to hinder your progress by blocking your muscle groups because you're pressing too much. Now, that's not to say we don't press, we do press, but there's got to be, your body's always got to be behind every technique, you know. Now I'm going to show you something different. First of all, let's break away from the notion of just a simple straight line punch. First of all, it's important, fundamental, if you're a Wingchun person, to understand why we do center line punches and why this punch can be powerful, although many people don't see it that way. But it's not the resolution to all our types of attacks, right? Chisao happens because, in a nutshell, just putting it very briefly, if I'm attacking him at short range, and he blocks me, then a reaction must happen. If I train my body to only push my punch, I'm never going to be able to get a reaction out of it. Does that make sense? So if I'm moving and he blocks me, I can still move forward, which is part of our combat principles, to move forward and destroy his body structure. Now, if I'm pushing with my arm, there's no way that I can retreat a reaction, create a bounce out, and loop over his arm. My arm's more or less, always going to be fairly relaxed. Not relaxed, dead relaxed. I'm talking about an elastic type of relaxation. My muscle group is still tense. More or less like your body. When I stand in an upright position, you know, I'm not tense to stay straight. My body is relaxed, but I use the necessary muscle groups so my body can function. So there is a tension that keeps my skeletal muscle, my skeletal group up, right? So my skeleton has to have some muscular support. It's the same thing with Chisao. You can't be excessive with it. You've got to have a natural tension, right? And now let's have a look. I'm still concentrating on the center line, and what sort of hits, what sort of strikes comes out of Wingchun. It really depends on the type of reaction he does. Or I could use my own initiative, and if I see an opening, I don't necessarily have to take him with a straight line punch. I may just come in and strike him straight away, you know, with a surprise attack, elbow right into the head. So there are many types of strikes. But if we look at Chisao, right, if he gives me an input, right, now obviously we're going to make this very obvious. We don't stimulate a boxer. He gives me a stimulus for a bouncer. Now, if he gives me too much stimulus, I'm not using a straight line punch anymore, although I could. But my technique now becomes a fuxer, right? If he lifts my arm up, because he may do that, I may come underneath and give him an elbow strike, right? Or the same thing, if he gives me direct pressure, I may go in with direct elbow strike either into his head or in his sternum. Fuxer, and hit him again. So if we don't be faithful to the center line theory, and we don't have our target where we're aiming for, then a lot of these techniques will probably never happen if he doesn't give me a stimulus. There's no reason for me to create different techniques if, you know, in the theory that we use, which is if the weight is free, just simply attack and move forward, right? So if I'm free, I'm just going straight through. If he he resists me, at this moment here, my absorbing Chisao is now born, right? So I have to learn to give way to his force, simply so my body can move forward and keep on attacking him. And so we have many types of strikes, including, someone doesn't believe it, including hammer hits. But if he comes in from ahead, if he comes in, and I do a Chisao, I can, on Paksao, will find the release and come in with either, it's very similar to a hammer hit, bang, or it looks like a Tunsao. I can't really determine what type of hit I'm going to give him. I certainly wouldn't do something like follow the rival. One, I let go of his energy, come back into the center line, and then take off. It's just way too long. I've got to take off from where his energy is. So he's brought me here, I'm going to return back to the center line. So if you look at me, I'll be doing something like this, and of course if I do a photo of this, people say, well, that's not Wingchun, right? Chisao is so chaotic that I have no idea where my hit's going to come from. If he comes in low, and I do a low bouncer, I'll come up with a high fox up to his neck. What's the big deal? At this point here, I may come in either with a hook, alright? Depends. So many punches, right, are derived, okay, mainly due to his pressure, right? Even from here, I might go pucks out. If he gives me resistance, resisting, I make him come in with a lapsa and hook him into the head, alright? So that's why, Wingchun Do, seems like it's, might be a boxing technique, it might be, but in reality it applies to what I call global Chisao, which is not really anything new. It's just not if people are fixed and working in a set pattern, then you don't have the freedom of seeing these type of other opportunities to strike somebody. It really depends, it doesn't make any sense to me that if someone comes to push me, right, mi spinge phone passo, he pushes me, and then I have to do a Wingchun punch, and he's got his elbow up. Right? For me, it's not going to happen. Either I'm going to have to do a secondary technique and pucks and hit him to the head, or I'm going to lapsa him. Right? Either hit him low to the ribs or come in with a hook, which to me is more practical, because I'm not going to have the elbow blocking my Wingchun punch. But that's not to say it's not Wingchun. He's just giving me a circuit of energy. I recycle it, which is true to the Wingchun Chisao principles, and it comes to a hook. So, that's why we have hooks, that's why we have uppercuts, that's why we have a lot of strange techniques. Don't define Wingchun just as a straight punch theory, because it doesn't work that way. And of course the final point is that sometimes we do have to learn to work with pressure, because obviously in a real fight, people aren't going to be doing this, And of course the sense of the exercise, or the purpose of the exercise, loses its purpose because you don't see real combat applications. But at this point here, what's very important, what's more true to real combat? What is true is that no matter who you got in front of you, whether he's an experienced fighter or whether he's not an experienced fighter, you're going to always come across somebody that when he's decided that he wants to take you out or he really wants to bash you up, one thing's for sure, he's got to get into the dynamics of really taking your body space and landing punches, right, in this area zone here, which is very dangerous for him, right? I mean, I could be somebody who doesn't know anything, come in like this, but regardless of how stupid I may look, each punch wants to make its effect, and each punch wants to rub his body space. So Chisao must teach you, right, that if I punch up on the club, so that if he wants to take my body space, that I just don't stand there like an idiot, but that my angles, right, help me to move, create a good space, get into a new center line, and counter-attack. But if I don't have the principles of controlling his energy, right, or controlling his center line, then a lot of this won't work. And this is the same thing, even if I'm at long distance, and he comes to attack, right? I mean, I'm always going to protect my center line, right? And if need be, if I throw out an attack, it's not easy for him. Because this is right? No matter what he throws, right? If I just throw my hands out, right, I can counter a lot of punches. And I don't even know what he's doing. But but simply because I'm dominating his area zone of attacking. So this helps me to what we call bridging the gap, Chun Q, and then go into a Chisao phase. Because if he really wants to come in and hurt me, right, now I can move out of his way, counter-attack and come through. So that's why Chisao also needs to be trained lightly. And this is only maybe about 5% of what Chisao can bring you. And you know, there's a lot behind it. That's why it's such a long study. And it's also great because if you learn to do Chisao well, it gives you great physical benefits, helps you to relax your body, helps you coordinate your whole body because you learn to do more than one thing at the same time. I mean, when I'm doing Chisao with Yaojiu, I'm always in attack mode. No matter what happens, no matter what happens, I'm always in attack mode. My body always wants to try and dominate his structure. That's a fundamental thing that is lacking, you know, in some Wingchun societies or schools, without criticizing anybody because I don't really like criticizing. But I tell you what I see. Sometimes I just see people doing, you know, set formations. It's got a value, but you really need to learn to also work with pressure and be honest with your pressure. Because Chisao also needs to look at other realities in case I go down, right? I want to grab his leg and bring him to the ground, you know? Because when some people are being punched, they'll be picky, right? If he's attacking Wingchun and I can't cope with the punches, a lot of people will go into grappling or they'll try and go and ride. Now, if he hasn't got a good control of his midsection, then we're going to be in problems, you understand? So that's some of the applications of Chisao. I hope that helps you. And of course, if there's anything I can help you out with, just ask and I'll try and make a video on it. We'll see you in the next video.